So I just wanted to give a little bit more insight into what I was talking about with the true swing path and how lie angles affect it, and what the greats of the game were trying to do with their swing, and how some of that has got lost with the way the equipment's been made longer and lighter and more upright, and also some of the teaching beliefs of the past 20 years or so. You can see some swing deterioration in a lot of the great players over the years. We'll start off with Greg Norman here coming up, and you can see how the shaft angle in his hands are much more elevated, and the shaft is pointing up near his shoulder blades instead of his centre, his belly button area, when he was swinging the club very well. And as a result, he has to use his hands more and shut that face down. That's a great x-ray of what happens. Tiger still does it quite well with his irons because there's a bit of weight in the head. You can feel it. But with his driver, he just really has to stop his body and flick his hands off. He doesn't turn the club through with his body. And that's really hurt him with the driving accuracy. You can see here, the left one is turning the club through, the right one is throwing it off. A great overhead shot here of Gary Player, showing how he rotates his forearms and wrists as he lowers his body and gets that right arm tucked in, the club approaching from the inside so he can turn through the shot and not have to quit his body and just use his hands. Arnold Palmer from overhead, you can see how the club really comes from behind him, from the top of his swing here. He lets that club fall behind him as he starts to compress into the ground and turn through. He uses his hands, but his body is outracing his hands, turning that club through for him. This is a great view of Hogan showing what I talked about, how that wrist rotates, forearms rotate. You can't see it under his sweater, but his forearms are really rotating there to shallow the club out. Everyone does this with a nice knee compressed down to the ground. Footwork's very important because it provides support for the rest of the body to work. And that's why we want to keep those knees supporting and feet going down. See, a lot of the old players had nice knee flex. Today everyone wants to straighten out their knees. There's Venturi dropping the club down underneath, shallow in his plane out to get those hands in tucked to his body so he can release the club through with body turn, not just by using his hands. It's a combination, not just one. It's a great photo of Hogan starting his transition. He's into his reverse roll there of his forearms, and that's him at 72, still being able to show the form because his body knew and had the feeling of what it had to do. Shaft dissects his right arm, so that is a shallow approach. Even though the club looks like it's coming steep, it is up, but the club is shallow and behind him. And then he's fighting the force of the pressures of wanting to throw that club off through the ball. He's supporting that club with his right arm, letting his body rotate through. Nice leg work there, bringing the club around. You can see Ray Floyd, his club drops behind him there. It's a very consistent thing with all the great players. They all knew that they had to do this to be able to get the control of the club face where it mattered most, into and through impact. Sergio does it great today. Byron Nelson, you can see the knees starting to initiate, the forearms staying open, so that glove, or his, if he had a watch on, he'd be pointing straight up to the sky there like Trevino. This is where you want to pressure the club into impact. From there, not before. Trevino had an open stance. There's Bobby Jones, one of the greatest golfers ever, showing how he shallowed his plane out. And Sam Snead showing how that action lets the arm tuck in and the body rotate through, as opposed to this, where the shoulders stay steep and vertical and the hands go flying off with stiff legs. The body needs to start turning through before this point. You can see the stiff leg, vertical shoulders, the arms have to fly off to try and catch the club up to the ball, and you're just giving away all your accuracy and all your control, even on distance control, by doing this. Creating a large gap between the hands and the body, shoulders staying vertical, and the arms and hands fly the club off. Straight right arm. Not too bad there from Ernie, but you can see the result. His arms overtake, hands overtake, and the club face just gets closed because his body's not working properly through the shot. And you can see that club face there is already closed about 6 inches after impact. And that's a great photo of Sergey. You can see the shaft pointing in line with his belly button. He's turned through that shot. Just like here, hands are low, shoulders are opening, club is staying in line with his centre. That's Jim Furyk. That sequence there shows how beautifully he keeps the shaft on plane in the right position. He's not worried about it up here. He knows that that's his feel to get the club into the right slot to be able to deliver it and pressure it through impact and keep it on the correct path when he's hitting the ball, not beforehand. Great photo there of Hogan again. Right arm bent, club shaft pointing at the sternum there, at the stomach, the belly button area as he's rotating through. Trevino, you'll see him lower his knees to initiate. Forearms and wrists stay open, keeping the club behind him, so he can clear his body and start opening through the shot with the hands in close and the shaft and club face. The club face is going down the target line there. It's a great view, Hogan with a driver and with an iron. How well he did perform that. Nicholas played off upright lies, but he kept that right arm nice and tucked, and he turned through level with his shoulders. As you'll see here, he did not quit his shoulders and let his arms overtake. With an upright backswing, he still transitioned down by doing the same feeling that all these great players did. He's going to let that club fall behind him a little bit. He's going to keep his right arm and hands in close to his body, and then he's going to turn the chest through, bringing the club with it. You can see how nice and level his shoulders finished. Same with Aoki. Nice level shoulders, rotated underneath. Nick Price had a very quick tempo, but he could do that because he was so good from the transition there through there. He had such a great move, he could control that fast tempo. Hubert Green went up steeply, underneath, and look at again, nice shoulder rotation through, which proves the body is going along with it. There's Daly. Peter Senior, one of the greatest Australian golfers ever, flattening the club down and rotating it through with his body movement, keeping that butt of that club pointed at his chest, at his belly button. And there's Harry Varden showing the same form 120 years ago. So we can draw lines all over a computer, but we can't see what these players are feeling. We need to really listen to what they're talking about when they did their books or videos. This is not going to really prove much whatsoever. You can see here none of these players have the shaft pointing anywhere near the target line. There's been so much talk about keeping the butt of the club pointing at the ball up and down. It really makes no sense when none of these players did it. The whole idea is it's pressure. We're trying to let the club drop. And we're thinking club here and hands, everything's part one unit. So they all knew that this move here, keeping the club behind them, it's Lima, Jones and Player, allowed them to get the club into the slot, as Mo Norman there. Into the slot with the hands tighter, to be able to allow the shoulders to open and rotate through, so they didn't have to use their hands and give up their control. Here's today's up and down the plane with the butt of the club pointing at the ball there, and you can see it. That is really actually a steep move down. You may not look it, but that's a steep move, and all these players have to get straight legged, throw their arms and close the club face on the way through to try and catch up. That's a young Ernie who got the shaft pointed out beyond the ball and was a much better ball striker because of it. This one for the lefties. You can see that's a very steep position down. You can see how he has to straighten his arms, and that club face could go anywhere at that point. No coincidence that not many of these guys are recognised as great drivers of the ball. The short games are quite good, and you can swing a little bit steeper with a shorter iron, but the longer clubs really need to be rotating more around and around. And here's some views of today's players with the vertical steep shoulders and the hands and arms and club just flying off in all directions with stiff legs. So that's a very hard thing to time day to day, and these guys get to play all the time, so you could just imagine for your average golfer how hard that would be to time. So what we teach at advancedballstriking.com and with my students is to get the body to feel something. Most people say, well, I'm not flexible enough, or I'm too old and I can't do that. But anyone who can throw a ball underarm like this, you can see how much the body works, rotates, does it all. And that's what we teach our students, so they can learn to provide and get these feelings with a golf club in hand, with no trickery, just golf club. Here's Mo Norman showing what I'd talk about with that left wrist palm just pointing straight up to the sky. Now, he didn't do this when he swung at the ball, but that's his feel for what he was trying to do. So you've got to not take things too literally when you see them. That's his feel, that's what he wanted to feel. And here's me doing a little baseball type swing. You can see how the body really has to work in unison with that club. That's a great view of the shaft going into the belly button area with the shoulders rotated open, as opposed to that one where the hands are flying off. For more insight, visit bradleyhughesgolf.com or advancedballstriking.com/forum.
Very fast putting surface too once it gets onto the green. It's a beauty. Go in.
But it wasn't the end of the tournament before that, it is now.
I'll be making more videos over the upcoming weeks, so come back and join us, and hopefully you can all learn something to better your game. Thanks for watching.